of you walk the halls at Hempstead High School. None of you sit in the classroom. You have no idea how scary it is.
It is scary walking through Hempstead High School. What are you going to do?
The abysmal conditions in these schools have resulted in the denial of the basic state constitutional guarantee of a sound basic education.
School board meetings out of control, crumbling buildings, overcrowding, broken bathrooms, dirty cafeterias.
Hempstead is a bedroom community. The parents and concerned citizens and taxpayers and so forth seem to be asleep.
The $5.1 million that our auditors have found misappropriated.
It is unheard of. It is unmanageable. When you have a class of 40, now you're talking about 50, close to 60.
An abysmal 37% graduation rate, less than half the national average.
I don't have any classes, nothing.
So you've been coming to school and doing what?
Nothing.
Corruption. I believe that's the heart. It's been going on for 30 years.
Why are there no textbooks, no workbooks, no curriculum guides?
Hempstead High School on Long Island is one of the lowest graduation rates in the nation, and it is about to enter what is called receivership.
And that means it has 1 year to turn around all that failure.
We are not going to do business as usual, as they used to be here in Hempstead High School.
An esteemed educator known for fixing struggling New York City schools is ready to roll up his sleeves at one of the worst performing school districts on Long Island, and there's opposition.
Hasidic Jew is not somebody you're going to find, in Hempstead, and the children will be like my children.
Who negotiated the contract of the superintendent?
You should let the superintendent answer some questions, because you don't want to hear anything anybody else to say.
It's going to end. The corruption will end.
You can't do that. You can't do that.
The effort to heal.
Good morning, everyone.
A new school year and a new start in Hempstead, Long Island.
I want to welcome everyone back. Welcome back.
Where teachers and staff gathered to meet their newly hired superintendent, Dr. Shimon Warenker. A deeply religious educator with a record of turning around urban schools, brought in to transform a deeply troubled suburban public school system, one of the worst performing in America.
Our children are hurting, and they need a lot of help.
Warenker, the latest leader in a revolving door of fired and hired administrators. No one lasting very long in a school district where good intentions often dissolve into chaos.
Well, I'm pulling it. Did you just call me stupid?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I said the behavior is stupid.
Infighting by elected trustees who run the district, paralyzing progress for decades. Frequent clashes on display in public.
You just stated Dr. Warenker asked you this question.
One of the questions is the
Dr.
same
Warenker,
one that
I will
was
ask you this question.
It's time for civilized demonstrations. They had one goal in mind, and that was to rip this district apart.
Yes!
That is the agenda that have brought in the new leadership. It's time for us to wake up.
All right now you talk about civilized people, and you're talking about we want to work together. We are not doing that. And it's time for us to start working together. And anytime you sit here, you shut up. Anytime you sit here and you're talking about disrespect, I have never seen anything so disrespectful in my life.
If you notice, there are 3 changes. We don't have anyone up on the days. We're all one. You need to feel empowered, and you need to feel inspired just as much as children need it. I think what the school district requires are 2 basic things. One is a lot of love. I think the children, the adults may not have felt that love. And love is a unifying force, meaning it's a sense of a community. There's a divide, and folk need to feel that they're joined in common purpose for the children.
Love, a simple enough recipe for success, and yet not enough to change student outcomes in Hempstead. For decades, the school district has languished, graduating just a fraction of its senior class, 50% in a good year.
From my experience, transformative work takes about 4 years. But I believe it can be done. With the support of God Almighty, I think we're going to do okay.
He came in with a powerhouse resume as a reformer, a Harvard doctorate in education, a stint as a U.S. Army intelligence officer, a record of turning around some of the most violent New York City schools. His original model of education creates teams of teachers and rewards the most successful with higher pay.
I know there are a lot of concerns here. There's a lot of fear. I want you to lose that fear. I want you to be yourself. I want you to be happy and confident walking into the schools. And notice the kind of vision I'm bringing about empowerment and inspiration. How do you do that? Well, it begins through contract. None of you have a contract right now. And it's outrageous.
Not on his resume, but written all over his message, his roots, the son of a labor organizer, and his faith. As a young man, Warrenker converted to Judaism, joining the ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Lubavitcher sect.
Notice I'm not a very tall, big, imposing human being. I'm a short Jew. And yet, I've been given some tough assignments in my life. And I didn't do it by carrying a huge stick or hurting people or getting rid of people. No, first is to support, provide empathy, be humble, and take courageous stands when I need to. All of you have a great year. God bless you.
It was an odd fit to lead a school district that's almost all black and Hispanic, and yet Warrenker was selected in the district's first ever nationwide search, narrowly voted in by a sharply divided school board, where the power struggle and ethnic divide is often very loud and contentious.
We cannot keep this conversation back and forth. The superintendent created 5 committees, and this is the behavior that doesn't let us work together. This is the example that we should not be putting on students.
What I'm seeing is really just, I just never imagined it to be like this. I want to know why this is happening. Everybody here on the board is here for us, for the students, to help the community, and you can't agree between each other. I want to know why that is. If you can't agree with each other, then how are you going to help us, the students?
This is the seed that you plant. The state and everybody else, that Hempstead School District is the worst. You know, all of this nonsense has got to stop. It has got to stop.
The board majority took the liberty to sort of kind of silence the community. This is going to be the new superintendent, and you have no say.
I don't have the proof that his program that he's trying to bring towards Hempstead, which is the New American Initiatives, has been a success in the city schools. You have to understand that this is a suburban area, so I don't want to feel like our district that I'm a graduate of is the guinea pig for an experiment. Our kids deserve better, and again, to be frank, to be honest, he may not be here pretty soon.
Opponents rallied against his selection before he even got started.
The kids in Hempstead had been suffering for decades. And I've had experience in turning around schools, in school communities, and very successful experience. And I think I could make a difference. ¿Cómo está, señora? Buenos días.
He also came to Hempstead with a not-so-secret weapon in a district where more than a third of the 8,000 students are just learning to speak English.
Shimon Warren, ¿cómo están? No puedo darle la mano solo a los hombres.
Born in Chile, Warrenker's native language is Spanish. His plan was to make a plan, a 4-year strategy.
The only way we can come up with a plan of action is if we listen to the community and hear what teachers, parents, students are saying about the school and the school's district. And this way we get the information so that we can make an analysis, create priorities, and create a strategic plan.
Beginning with a personal inspection of every school, many of them crumbling. Warrenker's walkthrough revealed leaks, neglect, decay, and overcrowding, made worse by a flood of recent immigrants. But 1,600 students were exiled to moldy and at times vermin-infested portable classrooms used for decades.
The nearby middle school shows outward signs of wear, has no auditorium, and a shocking turnover rate for teachers. It's a school where roughly 80% of the 8th graders failed to meet state standards in 1999 tests.
High dropout rates and absenteeism, deteriorating buildings, 2 were just forced to close, consistently low academic performances.
Even an accurate head count had eluded past administrators.
I'll be one to bet if you asked them what is the exact attendance in Hempstead right now, they couldn't tell you.
I want to count. Okay, get a head count.
So had student class schedules and transcripts.
This next story brings new meaning to the phrase missing the mark. Grades for hundreds of Long Island high school students were never recorded.
The book is missing with all of our transcripts, and that most of our grades are missing too.
And I'm missing classes, like I don't have an English class.
I'm actually missing English 12 and Earth Science.
For the past 4 years, I've had a messed up schedule. So right now, I only have 1 class.
So far you have 1 class? What does that mean?
They've only scheduled me 1 class for the next first semester.
What's your class that you're scheduled for?
Gym.
Security was also wanting.
The first 2 days were quiet. The 3rd day, we already had a gang initiation. The very next school day, we had a shooting at the back gate. And, you know, this is only week 1.
One thing to possibly look at is maybe upgrading our surveillance cameras, like where they're located.
Yeah.
And which ones are working.
We have $9 million sitting, waiting for us to use them to do technological upgrades.
Funding grants for long overdue improvements had gone untapped for lack of follow-up for years. Dysfunction often made news.
The public institution responsible for posting this summer reading list with a slew of errors is Hempstead Public Schools. There are more than 30 misspellings, misnomers, and grammatical errors.
Warrenker recruited 2 new principals.
I don't think anything could have prepared me for just how challenging Hempstead is. Pretty much anybody that I spoke to when I said that I was considering Hempstead, first it was kind of people cringed, you know, like why would you go to Hempstead? Haven't you read the stories and heard about the dysfunction, the chaos?
And at the middle school?
I was a middle school principal in the South Bronx. I was about 2 miles away from Dr. Warrenker and turned one of the most failing schools in the city around to a top performing school in a matter of 2.5 years.
I think you're going to see change in the district. I think that the children are going to get the materials that they need, that the teachers are going to get the professional development that has been so lacking.
Many of those teachers scared into silence, they say, for years.
The first time in years that we were asked about what we wanted, what did we need in order to make sure the children were successful. No other superintendent in the district had ever asked the teachers anything about what was happening in the district. Hope, a chance for a change.
And then Warrenker set his sights on long-rumored corruption, asking a leading forensic audit firm to look at how a more than $200 million budget was being spent.
One of the things that the Hempstead has been known for is a lot of corruption. And this is one area in which we want to bring forensic auditors and make sure that we root out that corruption so that the money is actually going to the children.
It's really sad. It's really sad, but the mission of the board is to protect the well-being of the students, the taxpayers. This has been abused for too long.
Hempstead Public Schools is the largest employer in Hempstead. And in some cases, it's been used in a way as an employment agency and not necessarily as an educational institution. Again, the focus has not been making sure that the children have a great education, although everyone will say that that is their focus. But when you see the facts on the ground, it's obvious that it's not.
And it wasn't just suspected financial sleight of hand. Academic numbers were also in doubt. District leaders admitted to fudging grades and promised to stop after a 2014 state review found failing grades were routinely rounded up so students would artificially pass.
The grades of more than 1,200 Hempstead High School students were altered during the 2012-2013 school year.
But I heard there was stories of grade tampering, teachers taking Regents exams home to change answers and bringing them back the next day, weapons being collected but not reported, students not being held accountable.
Oh, it's still happening. There's pressure to change grades, especially for seniors, to make sure that the graduation rate is higher than it was in the year prior. We are asked by administrators to change the grades directly.
Even though they have clearly a failing grade.
Correct. They can't do simple things like read, follow instructions, do basic math, addition, subtraction. Forget about multiplication. I'm talking about high school 9 through 12th graders.
What's the message about why you're pressured to do this?
To improve the graduation rate and to just get the kids out of the school. We are pushed as educators to get everyone through. Yeah.
Just pass them.
Just pass them.
Good morning, good morning.
So is this mission impossible?
Good morning. I don't think anything is impossible. Is it challenging? I would say yes, it is very challenging. I would say it's even more challenging when the community feels divided. Whether you like me or not, my success is the children's success.
But instead of a clear path to this success, reformers were stepping into a cauldron of opposing forces.
Please, when you're talking to me, be mindful that you're talking to a board member, one who oversees you. This is your first time being a superintendent, I believe? So the board, which consists of 5 members, and please do not interrupt me.
And this is your first time being a board member too?
Politics on the 5-member school board was notoriously vicious and fractured, with tensions stoked by the growing Latino majority in the community. The split reflected in seesawing power on the 5-member elected board that was hard to follow, with costly legal sparring between opposing camps. While one majority hired Shimon Waronker, soon after a different faction won control. But before the changeover would take place, Waronker's supporters on the board ousted opposing trustee Lamont Johnson for allegedly breaking board rules in an election. His removal kept Waronker supporters in control of district policies and purse strings, but launched open war.
This is the meeting of the board. You don't get the right to direct what happens here.
So Hempstead for Hempstead is a local coalition of parents, it's concerned parents, educators, Hempstead staff, past and present, and just local advocates for, either people that had children that went to Hempstead School District and see some changes they're not happy with.
So unhappy with new school leadership, the grassroots group Hempstead for Hempstead hired this law firm to lobby and speak publicly for them. The group's founder, often speaking for himself, loudly at school board meetings.
This is still America, and the First Amendment gives me that right.
Thomas Parsley is a convicted Level 3 registered sex offender and former Hempstead School Board trustee, a fixture on a landscape blotted with bitter infighting for more than a decade. Court records reveal he also faced welfare fraud charges, but pled guilty to falsifying business records. Despite a criminal record, Parsley regularly calls the shots from the audience at school board meetings.
Their goal is to really send a loud message to Albany about their displeasure with what happened with the now majority school board and how they feel like the election and the results of that election were really hijacked. And since then, it has just been utter chaos.
You know what? This boy stinks. You really don't want to hear what the people have to say.
And now, with a front row seat, retired educator Dr. Jack Beerworth, assigned to Hempstead as a so-called distinguished educator in a highly unusual move by the New York State Education Commissioner to pull the district out of its downward spiral. His $175 per hour job to conduct an intensive assessment of the chronically troubled district, to be the eyes and ears of the state. Beerworth would take it all in as Warrenker was taking it on the chin. The district's decades of neglect was now his to answer to.
I have to look over my shoulder every 2 seconds in the hallway, like, this person gonna touch me? Like, who wants to live in constant fear? I don't wanna live in fear.
The equipment is falling apart. I honestly don't have a saxophone to play.
Our football field is a mess. Our bleachers are falling apart literally. We have poles and planks that are falling off, and it's embarrassing for me as a student. Water is dripping, it's a mess. How am I supposed to learn in an environment where my cloud is already overcrowded and I have a ceiling that's leaking yellow? I'm scared of rats and all types of animals and rodents running around.
I just want to say I'm as outraged as you are over this. I'm telling you, this is a high priority, and I saw what you're saying, and I felt the outrage that you have. And we're going to need to prioritize in how we spend our resources, because there are so many areas of the district that are in that kind of disrepair. And it didn't happen over a period of a month or 2 months. It's been happening over many years and decades. But it's time to change it.
I too want to know what the plan is. We can't get our community together, but yet we hold a meeting on Sunday when people are in church and enjoying their families.
The Sunday listening tour didn't help.
Randy is one of the most powerful women in the United States of America. She represents over 1.7 million workers.
Shimon said to me, okay, when is the first day you can actually spend a couple of hours? And this was the first day. Now, was Sunday? Look, my partner's a rabbi. And I know you don't ever want to mess with church or synagogue. So it's a terrible day.
3:30 on a Sunday. Warrenker's Blue Ribbon transition team was supposed to help draft his 4-year plan, but Weingarten spoke to an audience of mostly empty seats.
He created these amazing schools in New York City where they're completely different than many other schools. They cost a lot more money, and kids in those schools are thriving.
Shimon is a real, I think, national treasure. A primary and secondary education is the heartbeat of the country. Doing that well, most everything else is going to fall into place. If you're not, the whole society has extremely serious problems. You have to have real degrees or real graduation, having really gone to class, having really learned. You can't do it by fiddling with statistics.
Hempstead has had a history for close to 60 years, and we need a way out. And gathering the best minds who are coming to lend their support and expertise, this is what this district needs.
Warrenker's $50,000 trip to Harvard and Hofstra University to train staff and board members in mediation and leadership skills didn't go over well either.
And who paid for Harvard? That money could have went to the students. Who paid for Harvard? Who paid for those mediations in Hofstra? I don't need mediation because I was elected. Okay?
This is the perfect example of not cooperating.
If we can pay for room and board, but we can't make sure we don't have asbestos and mold in our buildings, heat in our schools, a proper track.
Yeah, we pay for
Don't get on your soapbox, because if you really want to go there, we fire a principal and bring in a new principal on day one.
The high school principal Warrenker replaced with Stephen Strawn, suspected of manipulating academic numbers and vastly underreporting student weapons confiscated. Allegations Strawn vehemently denied.
Why not give someone who was doing an excellent job a steady increase, and all the state records show that, the school moving in a positive direction? He turned around those graduation rates. It went from 37% graduation rate all the way up to 53%. How do you remove such a distinguished principal like Principal Strawn, who was doing all these great things, put in someone who's never been a principal before?
Hello. I can't shake your hand for religious reasons, so I hope you don't mind. I can shake gentlemen's hands, right? But for girls, I can't. The rules, I think, are good rules, so that I can stay married with my wife.
Warrenker had now embedded himself in the high school.
It's always Hempstead High School is bad. Hempstead High School is only known about for fighting.
What impresses me is how you guys are navigating the challenges. We have finished reviewing all our senior students. Some of the data is heartbreaking. I questioned the validity of the data coming out of the high school. I scrubbed the data, and we had over 250 no-shows for years. They haven't been attending school, and they're still kept on our rolls.
The district, Warrenker says he uncovered, was improperly collecting state funding for more than a third of the senior class that had dropped out, and 3/4 had no chance of graduating on time.
We know right now that they don't stand a chance of graduating high school. And there's no program for them. We're going to create programs for the students we know will not graduate high school, like pre-GED, GED, vocational programs. Do something for them this year so that they're not lost. This is tragic. If you look at the guidance counselors, I mean, they're overwhelmed. If some of the guidance counselors have over 400 students, you become ineffective at that point.
The village of Hempstead, 18 miles from Manhattan, surrounded by some of the richest communities in the nation with some of the most respected public schools. Garden City to its north graduates 97%. Uniondale to the east, with demographics much like Hempstead, graduates 78%. But Hempstead, collecting healthy levels of commercial taxes, with more than half of its budget provided through state aid, spends the average per pupil for New York, but graduates less than half that of its neighbors. Persistently listed among just a handful of school systems of its size in the U.S., other than juvenile detention centers and special needs schools, that fails to graduate the majority of its seniors.
There are real burning issues. And this district has been burning. We have to figure out how we all work together for the benefit of the children. If we keep blaming each other, the kids are the ones who will suffer.
And here on the front lines, moments like this came with the territory.
Take him to the dean's office. Welcome to Hempstead. Let's go.
Welcome to Hempstead High School.
All right. Come, let's go. It's painful to see something like this happen. You know, this is not the way a school should be.
I remember thinking it was a little odd. I didn't have anything on my calendar.
Principal Klein recalls an hour before that fight, he was summoned out of the high school to a meeting in the district office. But when he got there, there was no meeting.
I said to Dr. Warrenker, something's not right. It was a setup. A student told one of the high school administrators that there was going to be a fight, 7th period, and that's when I knew the whole thing was staged. I believe that the objective for this group of people who were loyal to the former principal was to create chaos at the high school level, create mayhem, so that I would be removed and he'd be brought back. I believe it's about patronage, that it's your friends that get hired, not necessarily the most qualified candidate.
Because I've seen too much, seen too many people I knew personally who did not belong in positions, and yet they got them.
A lot of teachers are getting positions based purely on nepotism. There are a lot of teachers that are hired that are church members, of administrators, or board members.
Patronage, a long suspected open secret in the district. Jobs doled out to instructors who are uncertified in subjects they're teaching.
Many times the elected school board member is there for for the purpose of hiring and firing people that she has control over. And for many years, it was the board president in Hempstead who was controlling that situation. But the board now is still very nepotistic, and I think the kids, unfortunately, and it's really a tragic situation. For 13 years, I've watched wonderful kids go down the tubes and go into a chasm.
We want to go to college! We got the knowledge!
A scathing 2004 audit found uncontrolled, inappropriate, and wasteful spending, inaction, and infighting. A decade later, another audit found unqualified staffers. A school board assistant paid nearly $95,000 with no known duties. Hempstead for Hempstead was now in an open campaign against Superintendent Warrenker, zeroing in on his use of his own nonprofit New American Initiative to guide the district. Warrenker openly named the foundation in his contract as a partner in reform and stepped down as CEO when Hempstead hired him. But its $450,000 price tag, plus 4 master teachers he hired to mentor other staff, set off alarms.
My taxes are $20,000. $20,000. And we're sitting here paying young kids to be master teachers $135,000 a year. Come on now. We're giving your company contracts. Blatant conflict of interest.
Him bringing in the New American Initiative was part of his contract. It was very clear in his contract that he was going to withdraw from having any financial interest, and that he was bringing them in along with Harvard University and other organizations to try and help the Hempstead School District. The pushback on this issue makes no political, makes no social, makes no educational, and makes no professional sense.
How has your welcome been? I have a stack here of, I think, 11 press releases in 6 weeks that have been issued from the group Hempstead for Hempstead.
It's not a very warm welcome, that's for sure. The reality is anything that will institute a kind of change from the past can upset a lot of people. They're going to throw everything that they can, real or imagined, and in a single-minded effort to make sure that I don't continue doing the work that we're doing.
I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome back Trustee Johnson to the Board of Education.
5 months into Superintendent Warrenker's contract, the balance on the board shifted yet again, with New York State's Commissioner of Education reinstating ousted trustee Lamont Johnson, who she ruled was denied due process. The new majority was now stacked 3-2 against Dr. Warrenker.
I know for a fact the so-called majority of the board are for the children. We're putting the children first. That's our main objective, is for the students to do well in the Hempstead School District.
Trustee Johnson?
Yes.
Trustee Gates?
Yes.
Trustee Still?
Yes.
In their first order of business,
resolved, effective immediately, law firm of Razor and Kniff PC is hereby terminated from representing the Hempstead Junior Free School District.
The law firm Warrenker had asked to investigate suspected fraud in the district's food services. Why was that important to do so quickly and do it all?
I have no comment on that.
Also terminated the contract with Warrenker's New American Initiative, and his planning blasted as too slow.
You had June, July, August to have a plan for the children. You make over $250,000 a year. We don't need you to call in all your cronies. Randy Weinberg, she don't get paid here, she don't work here. We're not interested in her solution. We need a plan from you. You've done nothing since you've been here.
What has he done since he's been here? Nothing.
Also fired days before Christmas, his 4 master teachers.
Shall no longer be employees of the district effective 12/22/17.
For the record, I'd like to say that I think this is the wrong way for a district to conduct its business.
The New American Initiative for $450,000 was not a budgeted item for the 2017-2018 school year. The master teachers, the 4 master teachers for $135,000 was also not budgeted for the 2017-2018 school year. And what that causes is when you have people vote, they vote for a budget, and we have to go by the budget they voted for.
You will answer the question of the citizen, or we're not moving. She wants to know which one of y'all did not defeat. What's the harm in answering the question, Shimmy?
With Warren Kerr under attack, he went on the offensive, posting an unprecedented open letter on the district website accusing the new board majority of sabotaging his efforts to fix the district.
If the adults are fighting, we can't help the children. We can't stop things midway and say, well, no, we don't feel like having this program. Like the New American Initiative was doing tremendous work so that we could help reorganize our schools, reorganize our contracts.
He also informed the board he was talking to law enforcement.
Every person in the Hempstead School District and everybody else looking from the outside needs to be suspect about all these firings, about all the turning out of individuals who are looking under the rocks where there may be very big concerns about issues of potential corruption.
The reality is there is deep and endemic corruption in the district. And it is very important that we work collaboratively to root out the corruption because the money's not going to the kids. We're one of the lowest paid districts in Nassau County, and yet we have one of the largest budgets in Nassau County. Okay, where's the money going? And so this is why the special investigators that we had hired to start rooting out the corruption were very important. The fact that the board let them go is critical.
They don't want him there. They are just preventing him to do his job, to accuse him of failure.
Hempstead, unfortunately, has a reputation and not many.
Dr. Warner, please don't put that out there. You know, as a leader of people, you have a responsibility to see the problem, but come with a solution. You don't get to constantly give us a commentary on what we're not. We don't want to hear that. At some point, you have to stop. You have to stop using the negative of why people don't want to come to Hempstead. You came to Hempstead. You didn't have a problem. So stop putting people on. I don't want to hear that out of you ever again. Tonight is the last night you used that commentary. It is so disrespectful to the people that are paying your salary every month.
Not many people want to come to Hempstead to be abused. And I just want to share with you. I will stand up for the children. I will do whatever it takes to help the children. And I don't mind taking the abuse. However, I want to share with you, that is a reality that is happening.
Stop it! You're causing it! You're allowing it!
No.
You're allowing it!
With the catcalling and all the name calling, I'm going to share with you. Not many people want to be able to do this. And what I'm saying to you is, if we collapse.
Those that were on the board originally had the majority, and they did what they wanted to, and they shoved the superintendent down our community's throat. They have disrespected us on every level. If you create that kind of atmosphere, like in my home, I tell my children, if I speak to you with respect, you give respect, you get respect. He's making it personal when he brought his own company in to do the work. When he came in with this master teacher program, I do believe in mentoring, but I believe that those teachers can help our other teachers, but it shouldn't be your company.
I heard you calling this superintendent a racist.
Yes.
Do you truly believe he's a racist?
When you disrespect us to the level that he has done, to me that's a form of racism. When you come in and you pimp us out the way he has, that's a form of racism. You cannot come into this community, any community, and raise their budget over $1 million from what we as taxpayers voted on last year. You cannot come and do that and it's okay. That's not the way it goes. So with the level of disrespect, you don't hear us, couldn't care less of how we feel about anything. You come in here with Randy Weingart and hold a meeting on a Sunday. Your Sabbath is Saturday and Friday evening. I have to respect yours, but you have no respect for mine. All that to me just adds up to racism. And I have Jews in my family, so it has nothing to do with his culture. I'm used to his culture, I'm very familiar with it. But you can't raise yours and step on mine. Our house is on fire. Our school is our house that is burning down. We don't have time for you to come here and take 6 months to a year to come up with a plan. We need you to come and hit the ground running.
He's been a really polarizing factor. He proved himself to be divisive.
Benjamin Warnica is placed on administrative LOA with pay for 60 days.
Divisions clearly etched in the 3-2 vote that night. The new board majority suspending Warrenker, barring him from schools, and hiring investigators to look into his actions. And to underscore a sense of victory,
The fact of the matter is it violates my contract and violates the law. I think part of the reason is the open letter that was sent out on Sunday, sharing what's really going on in the district, to let go of a superintendent 7 months into his tenure, right, in the middle of the school year, requires a drastic reason. And quite frankly, there is no such drastic reason.
This board has shown its true colors, because if indeed they had any interest in furthering what needs to happen in the Hempstead School District, they wouldn't suspend him. They'd try and find a common ground and work with him. A Harvard-trained educator has come in with a broom to try and clean house, and people want to remain in a situation that is strewn with problems. He found it necessary to speak to outside governmental agencies, including law enforcement agencies, about what was going on in the Hempstead School District. If you want progress, you must have change. People don't want change. They want to be where they are, and the real question is why? Why is it so comfortable for you to be in this place where more than 50% of the children in the high school are not going to graduate?
Here this man is trying to do what's right, trying to reform the schools, the whole district, and this is how they treat him. Dr. Warnica did not have to come here. He was fine where he was. He didn't have to come here. But he saw a need and he saw a calling, and he said, I'm going to come and I'm going to help the children of Hempstead. To say that this man is here and he doesn't want the best for the children, it's a lie.
They had pledged before he even started that he would be thrown out.
He wasn't given a chance. They definitely didn't want him. He was not what they were looking for. He was not anything close to what they would have accepted. He's too bright. And it's very hard to intimidate somebody if they're too bright.
the same week Warrenker was shelved, distinguished educator Jack Beerworth issued his recommendations, a long list of directives to revamp nearly every aspect of the long-struggling school district. Among the bleak stats in his report, decades of chronic financial mismanagement, 20 business superintendents in 21 years, millions of dollars in missed grants, millions spent on law firms that charged excessive fees, and a failure to follow recommendations of repeated audits. Warrenker, he wrote, had been drawn into the board's clear divisions, his master teachers putting undue strain on the district budget. The state gave the board just weeks to come up with a plan of action and a stern face-to-face ultimatum.
Are you alarmed by what you see going on in this district?
Of course we are. That's why we've put a distinguished educator in Hempstead, and we feel like that is helping us to move the district. We're aware of the changes that need to occur, and we want to make sure that the trustees are equally as seriously concerned.
We want to make sure that the board understands, by both of us being here, that this is critical.
The message was a no-nonsense message, and we have to get our act together, and we're going to get our act together.
Our buildings are overcrowded. We have students sitting on the floor. We have students eating lunch on the floor. We have gang violence left and right every day. We need the state here. We need all governing bodies to pull together and let's get our act together for the students. It's no shame in having the state here. Where have they been? We need them.
A familiar call here in Hempstead.
Who's going to step up to put out the fire? And that's the question we're dealing with today.
Do you want the state to step in?
I think the state needs to step in. I don't think we have a choice.
The echoes of calls for state help now reaching New York's governor. We asked him what the state will do.
If you don't have a real, credible, immediate plan for correction, then the state should come in and take over the school.
A plan must be developed in a very, very short time, in the next 3-4 weeks. They don't have to do everything that's there, but they have to come up with the plan of how they're going to do it. If they don't, the commissioner does have some power.
To remove elected board members.
Right, the commissioner does, and under the distinguished educator law that's in, the next step would be to replace the board, and that can be done. When the board is dysfunctional, and because of the nature of how people get elected and why they're elected, I don't see any way out unless there is some kind of different governance.
Because so many people are on the payroll, you're saying.
That's right. And when you have elections on Long Island, in school board elections, where 10 to 15% of the people vote, to get those 10 or 15% of the people, and you have a big staff that you've hired for the district, those people can certainly get the majority of the 10 or 15%. And so a lot of it has to do with not just the governance, but the fact that the people of the district don't care enough to vote.
Next to get the boot, his high school principal.
I was terminated by the Board of Education last night, effective immediately. No reason was offered. I think the district is rooted in corruption that has persisted for many years, and the people who've been brought in to make positive changes are now being eliminated, while the people who've been here for many years retain their jobs.
In Warren Kerr's place, the board majority tapped this longtime district administrator and returned Stephen Strawn as high school principal.
This community is not ran by New York Communities for Change. It's not ran by Mr. Frederick Brewington and his offices. It's ran by Hempstead. We are Hempstead Tigers, and that's what we do. You got to have love for Hempstead to understand. We had improvements with Dr. Strong.
But newly released 2017 graduation numbers by New York State would show the opposite. There was no increase to 53% under Strong, but actually a drop back to 37%. And the state would now send investigators to review if credit hours on transcripts were real. Even his own credentials were now in question. Chelsea University in England on Strawn's resume, where he lists a doctoral degree with high honors, was, according to the governing body of higher education in the UK, not accredited.
It was clear that Stephen Strong's doctorate was bogus. The school that he received his certification from is actually a degree mill.
As a school board trustee, Melissa Figueroa chose Warren Kerr as superintendent to turn around the district, but then she was voted out. Often shouted down at school board meetings, Figueroa called for the forensic audit of district finances going back 10 years. But before auditors could get their hands on records stored at this vacant school, fire broke out, ruled suspicious by the fire marshal.
When you have the same folks who have been running the district for generations, we owe it to ourselves to take a closer look at the record keeping of the district. Follow the money trail. Who are the people who are responsible for the demise of this district? There's blood on the streets and the children are suffering.
The high school principal whom I removed, I found that he was fudging numbers, both for a number of weapons that were being brought to the school, as well as academic records. And yet, not only did they bring him back, they granted him tenure. And they paid him for all the time he wasn't working. I believe that the only reason why they brought him back was because he was going to make the high school look good. The numbers are not going to be real, though. And that's criminal for the children. There's a lawsuit to reinstate me in my position as superintendent of schools of Hempstead School District. I have never in my entire professional career, and I have visited schools in almost every continent of the world, I have never seen what I have seen in Hempstead. That students who fail algebra are promoted into geometry, and who fail geometry are promoted into trigonometry.
They're trying to hide something. This man came with a plan to help these children that they haven't had for years. And now they want to get rid of him. So what are they hiding? That's all I want to know. What are they hiding?
So I do take exception as a member of the community being told, one, that we don't like Dr. Warnaker because he's a Jewish, he's of the Jewish faith. I take exception to the fact that, two, he claims that someone from the community has set a building with records on fire. Exception to the fact that we could find money to pay for everybody who formerly worked for his company that he started, but we can't find money to make sure we address the facilities issues, adjust the money to make sure that we have textbooks for our students. But then again, I have the heart of Hempstead, and no matter what anybody say, Hempstead is okay with the decisions that was made by the board.
Is that really the best use of school district funds now, to investigate Dr. Warnaker?
We have to do what we have to do.
The fate of the school district was for now in the hands of a federal judge. Court documents offered a scathing view of the district he was tasked with turning around. The board majority offered up its own sworn statements. Warnaker was not suspended because he spoke out, but because of his questionable hiring of master teachers and his use of the New American Initiative. They claim it was a possible act of criminal bid rigging. The suspension needed, they argued, to investigate other areas of possible improper, illegal, unethical, or inappropriate conduct, including Warnaker's failure to implement a violence suppression and facilities maintenance plan, failure to submit a grant application on time, and his failure to explain to the board why he terminated Principal Strawn.
Why do you think he did come to Hempstead?
That's the question. Hey, they gave him the checkbook to the district. Anyone that gave him a contract like that gave him a checkbook, an open checkbook to the district. And as taxpayers, we're not standing for it. Tell me, what has he done in 7 months other than rape this district financially? And I'll keep quiet.
Complete lies.
Complete lies.
Complete lies. He's
No.
here for the children. He's always been here
Definitely.
for the children.
Okay.
That's why we brought him in.
This district has been raped for how many years? 25?
Decades.
30?
Decades.
They didn't say anything about that.
Right.
They didn't say anything about that and did nothing for the children. He came with a plan for the children. Listen, I believe nobody's completely honest except my God in heaven. But I'm going to tell you something. He came with a plan for these children, and he had a lot of help. He really wanted to turn things around for these children. But they've had the opportunity for years, and they never did anything. A 37.5% graduation rate? They shouldn't even open their mouths.
Things didn't go Warnaker's way in court. The judge denied a temporary order to return him to his job and his claim his rights had been violated.
Today, we lost a battle in an ongoing war for the children who continue to suffer in Hempstead.
Your reaction to the decision, Lamar?
I think it was a fair decision by the judge. He looked through the facts and he made a just decision.
Do you intend to get him out?
I have no comment on the status of the superintendent.
There's always a disappointment when you lose at one level, but this is only one level. We might be able to raise the gambit of this conversation in a place that wasn't in a auditorium where people were being shouted down and told to hit the road, Jack.
I'm especially disappointed for the children and the teachers and the parents of the school district of Hempstead, because I've heard their cries and they're still calling me and asking when I'm going to return.
What we've been dreaming for and hoping for to come to Hempstead finally had walked through the door in June. And then all of a sudden it was just taken from us.
As the board plodded ahead with the required plan of action, civility was not required at board meetings.
District has nothing to hide. The district should not act this way.
The state criticized much of their corrective plan as inadequate, but progress came in the form of a new business and security consultants, new vocational classes, and a community bond vote to build a new elementary school. The board clashed next on whether to continue to fund the forensic audit, which was raising red flags about payroll practices. 129 former employees still getting paid. 500 employees collecting checks as vendors, and unusual trends like duplicate payments and checks written on weekends.
It is criminal what is taking place in Hempstead. So far, it's the tip of the iceberg.
The state doesn't seem to care. They don't seem to want to step in and help. They just seem to have a blind eye.
They're investigating me. The reality is, I've done nothing wrong. I've come in with best of intentions. To rob from the kids, it's the opposite of the reason why I came. Look, the history of the crookedness in Hempstead far preceded me. I didn't institute the crookedness that's taking place there. I was coming to remove it. That's why I was removed.
He didn't look like the rest of the population. His religion was different. It bothered me about the fact that people looked at him differently than they would have somebody else who did look like them.
And all that is just a false narrative, claims the board majority, by those who don't share their love for Hempstead.
Trust me, if the state want to take this district over and remove this board, when we get it back, I will run and I will win again. Point blank.
Everyone does not have to get along, but I can say myself personally, I have not been disrespectful to any board member. I've handled myself as a gentleman. Board does not have to get along. This is a democracy. That's why it's 5 members on the board. The past few years, we've had several students that have been accepted to Ivy League schools. That's right. Okay? We have board members, we have other people from the community. They don't get that information out. Leadership that's supposed to believe in the school, okay? The leadership of the school is for education. It's not to play make-believe that they're attorney general or prosecutor and anything else. They can do an investigation all they want, because when Mike Johnson's hands is clean, Randy Stiff's hands is clean, and Dr. Gates' hands are clean. It's a negative narrative. If you don't believe in the students, if you believe Hempstead is so bad, you should not be here.
What about believing the numbers? New York State in May released its review of student transcripts. It found before Warren Kerr's arrival, the high school highly exaggerated the number of students taking the minimum number of credits. Only 57% of 11th graders, not the 90% the district had reported. The findings could result in the appointment of an independent receiver to run Hempstead schools. What is not a false narrative, say teachers, is a school system in the running for last place in the nation in turning out graduates.
These children that we have are capable of so much more. If they were just given the guidance, given the support, given the structure that all children deserve, especially here in the United States, where education is free and it's a right that we all have.
The end of this story, a cliffhanger.
I hope that good will prevail over the darkness that has fallen upon the district. And I also hope that we will do what we're supposed to do, what we all committed ourselves to do, which was to educate students to become productive members of society.
The cliffhanger is this. There are two unknowns right now. Obviously, what is going to happen with me vis-a-vis the district. And there are still a lot of good guys out there. And those good people are going to make sure that they hold these folk accountable and that the right thing is done for the kids.